too is humans matter. You know, you mentioned something in the beginning. You said, James, that what is RTB? RTB is a mechanism in which we buy and sell, right? But humans matter. You know, having the individuals who can look at it, analyze it, think about it, report on it, that matters. And I think a lot of times we get caught up with thinking, okay, it's just RTB, it's just machines. Well, it's got to be much more than that, right? For us all to do well in that industry.
It's true. I mean, it's true. So, you know, whether it's fraud or non-human traffic or whatever the euphemism you want to use for it, is there a difference between media you buy in RTB versus media you buy in any other form? Is it equally prevalent in both, or is one more than the other? Because there's still plenty of media being bought not in RTB. Is it suffering from the same stuff?
I'll take a shot at that. Yeah, I think it's certainly. I think, again, how we
and whatever you did say, add to the end, which is safer?
Yeah, okay. So I think we're talking about how we buy. How we buy doesn't necessarily matter as much as what we buy, right? So we're talking whether I write an IO to somebody, whether it be a network that I don't have a relationship or an inventory source that I don't have a relationship, or I buy that programmatically. If I'm not paying attention to what I'm buying, right, it could be wrought with fraud. Now, it's up to me to be able to put the mechanisms in place to prevent that. We feel as if within an RTB environment, because Xaxis, we're an audience-based company, to be able to put as many data layers and protection layers available to us on top of that gives me the maximum amount of protection because I'm controlling the levers, right? I have a team of individuals controlling the levers that give me the tools both pre and post. I have a massive DMP that allows me to analyze it. So if something spikes, then I have a team of individuals who look at that in real time. If that was an IO-based transaction, right, and I didn't necessarily, wasn't set up, I'll say traditional media buying, there would be a lag for me to be able to get that information, whether it be a delivery report at the end of the week that I then got, that I had to analyze to see what that CPA goal had done. I wouldn't have the real-time levers or mechanisms to be able to safeguard ourselves.
So that's counterintuitive to me. I would have thought that if I buy something from ESPN, it would be safer than if I buy something on some sort of programmatic platform. But
I think it's pretty well known that there's a degree of fraudulent traffic on the sites you mentioned.
Right. So you don't think that one is...
Here's how it happens, right? So it's not like somebody goes out and intentionally at ESPN or other site buys fraudulent traffic, but it's a legitimate strategy to buy search engine marketing, right? And it's a legitimate strategy to go ask for somebody to generate traffic for my site. And almost every large site does that. And some of those people work with other brokers that help buy traffic. And one of those guys is incented on driving traffic to a site and therefore buys traffic from some dude in Kazakhstan, right? It happens, right? So if you look at, I mean, I think it's you can't say whether I buy, here, let me go back to the question, because the way we sort of think about it is, what's guaranteed and non-preemptible? Right, so that's a segment of inventory that we supply, guaranteed, non-preemptible, and it goes all the way down into a remnant open market. And it has every layer in there, a priority market, a preferred set of buyers, right? And this is where we slot in, where we have private marketplaces or whatever else you want to, the euphemism, but it's layers of traffic that different people can buy and have different sort of comfort levels with their ability to access that supply, their ability to have a first right of refusal or a first shot on goal or whatever you want to call it. And that's sort of the way we think about segmenting the traffic. And actually there isn't, I think it's wrong to conflate the segment of traffic with its fraudulent or suspicion.
Right.
I think that there's a fundamental difference, and I agree with what Walter's saying, in that every site has, to some degree, some evidence of fraud. It might be fractions of a percent, it might be 60, 70, 80%. I think that what we see typically from our data, which is also billions of impressions every month, is that typically the sites like ESPN and the New York Times have a much lower degree of fraud. They don't need to buy as much traffic. They don't need to do these audience extension networks. And if they do, and if they are presented with fraud, it's typically based on the notion that you're brokering deals with people in Kazakhstan. Any Kazakh people in? I hope not. But the point is that there are people on the open RTB who are purposefully intending to defraud advertisers. And to me, that's a very big difference, right? Somebody who is knowingly trying to commit a crime is a very different mindset than somebody who is a byproduct of an ecosystem which lands up being daisy chained through multiple hops. Both both opportunities exist for exchanges and people who are responsible for managing those exchanges to clean up those types of people who are intentionally committing fraud. And publishers have the opportunity to work with technology to make sure that whoever they're buying extensions from don't broker deals with people from unsavory, fraud countries.
It was still shocking to me when I talked to you all before the panel that I really felt that whether it's New York Times or ESPN or some other big brand name, that you would be safe if you bought from them. And unanimously, all of you said, not so much, which,
I thought that Lance Armstrong writing for U.S. Postal Service was clean.
I did
I would say
too.
that-
What a dunk!
I believe too.
You and I are the only two, but there you go.
I would say that the majority of the top listed comScore 100 are predominantly safe. I don't want to sit here and get people thinking that ESPN and New York Times are riddled with fraud. It's a very small percentage, a fraction of traffic, and it happens very rarely. We publish results. We see probably less than 3% of direct publishers, and when we say direct publishers, we mean people that typically resell or sell their own media, have instances of fraud, whereas in the exchange traded world, we typically see sometimes as high as 30% of those impressions.
We have data working with the premium publishers as well as things that are going through networks and exchanges, and absolutely, fraud happens to those premium publishers, usually not by them.
Right.
They get defrauded by trying to buy inventory. And one of the ways that they keep that really down is because they get those comScore rankings, right? So they want to be in the top 100. And they'll come to us and they'll say, wow, we have all this great new traffic. And we'll say, no, you don't. None of those people on the panel ever went to your site. That's not actually real traffic. And we can work with them to actually help them understand how they're being frauded, and they're getting traffic that they don't want to get, that they don't intend. So it's often those premium guys, when it happens, it's a surprise to them. They don't want it. It does happen, but it's pretty quickly resolved. When you look at the overall data across the premium numbers and those that are sent through exchanges and through networks, there is an overall difference in the viewability percentages. Viewability percentages on direct purchased inventory, where sites are primarily selling their own inventory, the viewability is higher. When you look in the exchanges down to that lowest tier, the guys who are intentionally obfuscating their URLs so that they cannot be seen, or they're falsifying their URLs. There's some little site and they'll say that they're Yahoo. They'll put that in there so it looks like they are.
By the way, we flag that when we see like Yahoo or Google.com coming through.
Yes, you don't want to run
You
that.
would flag that, right? If you saw that coming in.
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Who held the record in Facebook for
Those-
it requires people like all of us on the panel not to say we have the best solution or we have the cleanest network or we have the thing, but we actually have to come together and say, how do we all work together to identify what traffic is really good as an ecosystem? You with me still with the house party to the Lance Armstrong to the
Don't ruin it for the rest of the
to the-
people, right?
right? You
Don't
have
pee in
to.
the corner.
So it's like when I send it, when I believe that this is somewhat suspicious, but I'm not sure. I don't know. It's ranked 750 on the, if you guys are familiar with the SAM score from AdSafe, and I send that into the network, and I send it to Turn and to MediaMath and to Magnetic, right? And I get no bids from everybody. I should take that as a signal and say that probably is more suspicious than, maybe what the AdSafe alone score says it is, right? Or what would even be better is if they would actually fucking signal back to me that they didn't like it for these reasons, right? What's interesting, though, is we did a histogram of AdSafe scores against buyers and CPMs. And the more suspicious traffic, not totally suspicious, but the suspicious traffic got higher CPMs and higher bid rates from some people.
But that's also because of the attribution problem, right? So how many people in the audience think about fraud being a problem that the sell side should clean up their act with? Because I've heard that from a lot of buyers, right? They're going to a meeting in an agency, it's like, fraud's not our problem, it's the sell side's
It's a
problem.
publisher problem, right? Should it be a publisher
How many people
problem?
think it's a publisher problem?
So all right, let's
well,
do
that's
this
a good-
survey.
that's a good start.
No, because they may not be putting up their hands. Okay, you have to put your hands up to one of these questions. It's a buy side problem or it's a sell side problem. Everyone has to put up their hands. So buy side problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sell side problem. Most people think it's a sell side.
On
An
the publisher
ecosystem
guide.
problem, an industry problem.
Oh, industry
Right.
problem.
Okay, so
Everybody
we all
agrees.
We all agree, and we're all going to Walter's party. No one pee in the corner. But so to me, the reason why the higher CPMs are generated on sites that are more suspicious or impressions that are more suspicious is primarily because of the way that you are rewarding and optimizing around fraud. If my model to optimize is a view-through attribution model, and on day one, I show up my ad and it's on a page with one ad and it shows up for 5 seconds and it's highly viewable. And on day two, that same ad shows up, but it's got one other ad on the page for 3 seconds. And on day three, the ad shows up out of view, but the conversion event happens at that day 3. The ad server, DFA, Atlas, whatever you're using, records that last view through attribution, and you give credit to that day 3 publisher, which guys that never saw your ad. Now what happens in RTB is you keep optimizing around, right? You go and you go and you go and you go because, hey, this guy's driving impressions and conversions and that's good stuff. And so I'm going to keep paying and the machines just go after it. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, you look at your campaign report and you compare it to your purchase metrics. You're like, whoa, I spent a lot of money on media and I didn't really sign up any credit cards or whatever the metric is. With RTB, you can actually prevent buying in the first place. Don't buy an ad if it doesn't have a probability of being viewed. Don't buy an ad if it's fraudulent. There is so much supply out there, you don't need to waste your money on taking a chance.
But doesn't it also depend on your model? So if you're putting 100% of your weight on the last clip,
It does, absolutely. There's multi-touch and all those things, absolutely.
100%.
But any
That was
any
a gross
impression that's
oversimplification
served.
of attribution, which I didn't mean to do.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to go into the whole analogy.
Regardless of any attribution model you're using, any impression that is not seen shouldn't be an impression in a model. And just take it out and then run your model off of that, and whatever model you have, differentiate and win with.
So one of my favorite little stats from, we did Attribution Revolution, we did like 10 places, and one of my favorite stats that sort of universally was out there, if the ad was seen within 5 minutes of the conversion, what the hell are you doing? Like, seriously. Like, when was the last time you saw an ad and that caused you to purchase something within 5 minutes? Like, it's just not there. And yet, there are still plenty of view-through, click-through models that allow that to happen.